operation, and then I'll make an area plan for the helicopters in case something is happening off the immediate target area, so that they're able to talk to two different, an area and an immediate when the immediate operation is taking place. So these two slides, the previous one and this one, this would now be the close-up, whereas the previous slide would have been the area of Marikana.
So is this contemporaneous?
This is contemporaneous, yes. The next page is 451. That's not contemporaneous. Again, it's an introductory slide. The 452.
I'm sorry, before we deal with that, 451 you explained to us is not contemporaneous, but it presumably is a sort of cover sheet almost.
Yes.
The documents that follow.
Yes.
And it indicates that they are documents relating to the 16th of August.
That's correct, Julius.
Now, does that mean, say, 2? 16th of August, say 2. Does that mean that this document, 452, purports to be a document prepared on the 15th, that's say the Wednesday, for use on the 16th? Or does it purport to be a document prepared on the 16th for use on that very day?
Jefferson, if I'm looking at the actual, what we have here, I'm not sure who actually, they got it from me. I didn't hand it myself to Arpit, so I'm trying to also, as we go, just sort of understand. But it was more a brief document to people after the fact.
So in other words, it's not contemporary.
No.
452 isn't contemporary.
Well, 451 is not contemporaneous. 452.
Well, 451 is at the cover, isn't it?
Yes, that's the
covering
introductory
sheet.
slide.
452.
It's not contemporaneous. It's an operational overview again. I think it's been upgraded to actually show. It may have been one of the slides that I was working on during the JOCOM of the 16th for presentation. But I think there would maybe be a clearer or an older version of that showing that it would not have been in line. Because I don't particularly remember showing that either. I may have, but I don't remember showing that at the JOCOM on the 16th. It's possible I did. But as I say, the operational overview slide would have been brought over from the 15th again. It would have been upgraded to reflect the 16th, similarly as the coordinating instructions would as well.
Is this a convenient stage for us to take the tea in German, or is it something you want to add first before we do that?
No, fine, Jefferson.
Mr. Secker? Fine, Jefferson. We'll take the tea in German first.
She's far from where I am. I'm going to her. She's far from where I am. I'm going to her. Yeah, but I'm going to her.
Is it cool? Can I get up now? Why do you think do aha? Yeah, I'm not sure. Have you heard who's going? I don't know. Yes. Hello, darling. I'll go quick case. Okay, because I was thinking who's getting
I remember was yeah. Nice to meet you again. I'm fine. So you decided to come to it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You'll be here for the yeah, we should right now. No, I was just trying to understand how many cameras we
Let me speak to you quickly. That's his favorite. No, no, no. This one here. Is that Marsan? Yeah. Can I check?
Testing 1, 2, 2.
resumes. You're still under oath, Colonel.
Mr. Chairperson, to speed things up, I asked the Colonel during the break just to work through the slides and to prepare a list of those which he recalls as being contemporaneous and those which he recalls as not being contemporaneous.
Hoping he was going to give us a list of them all in one go. But anyway, so has he done that? Have you done that yet? Have you had a chance to do that yet, Colonel?
I've endeavoured to do that, Chairperson. Can I give the list?
Colonel, if you can just give the list. Start with the contemporaneous ones.
Okay, I've made three categories, which is contemporaneous, not contemporaneous, and then the uncertain ones, or ones which are contemporaneous with word changes in them. Contemporaneous is the following page numbers. It's 429, 432, 433, 434, 435, 438, 440, 441, 442, 444. Sorry, 444 is an uncertainty. It's 44. So it's 442, 445, 449, 450, 456, 457, 465. The uncertainties, 430, 432.
432 in your contemporaneous list.
Sorry, it's...
According to my notes.
Okay, I have it as well, that there may be a word in it. That it may be... It was there, it's just there's a word in it that's changed. For instance, phase to stage.
I've added it in both lists.
Okay.
Carry on.
Sorry, I have that as well for 444. Also that there may be a word in 444 that is...
Gave us 444 originally in your list of contemporaneous documents, and then you deleted it and said, sorry, that's uncertain.
Yes.
But so it now fits in the uncertain column.
Uncertain.
Right? Carry on.
447. I think that's also in contemporaneous. I've actually drawn them across. Okay, not.
447 isn't in contemporaneous.
And then 452.
You have to give us the non-contemporaneous one. That's the others.
And the uncertainties are simply word choices that may differ slightly. Okay, the non-contemporaneous...
It's phase to stage.
Yeah, things like that.
And then the rest are non-contemporaneous.
Yes.
Reverse engineering, the usual phrase.
Yes. Or introduction slides to...
Sorry, reverse engineering or introductory, sort of almost like cover sheets.
Yes. Do you want those slide numbers as well or not? I'm not sure.
I suppose for the sake of completeness, you better give them.
Okay, the non-contemporaneous 431, 436, 437, 439, 443, 446, 448, 451, 453, 454, 455, 458, 459, 460, 461, 462, 463, 464, 466.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. And before we leave this point, I do want to put to you that although what you've given us obviously reflects your best memory at this stage, it's not necessarily going to be foolproof. Would you accept that?
I would accept that, yes.
And to illustrate my proposition, you'll recall that on Tuesday last week, when we were discussing slides that conflated amply with the protesters, you were fairly confident that those were slides that had been introduced for the first time when you reverse engineered SS3 in December. And then we took you to exhibit J50, which was in fact a presentation that was last saved on the 16th of August when those slides were there.
That's correct.
So it's your best attempt to recall, but it is obviously subject to errors in memory.
That's correct.
Colonel, the next set of plans that we were provided that we were furnished by SAPS were the plans that were discovered as the plans by the SAPS, but then at a later stage those were replaced by Exhibit SS3. Neither of those two sets of plans was a fully contemporaneous set of plans.
What we've been going through up to the 466 consists of the plans that were sent to IPA.
Indeed, Chairperson.
That's the first set of plans.
That's the first set of
And
plans.
the second set of plans is exhibits.
Well, the second set of plans were the plans originally discovered by the SAPS. Unfortunately, we no longer have those plans, but it's not a major issue. They were subsequently replaced by Exhibit SS3.
So SS3, is that what you call, for the sake of brevity, the second set?
Well, I'll call them the third set because they are the third set, but they were furnished to us in December last year. And it's common cause that those are plans that you reverse engineered in December last year.
That's correct. And as I say, it was not a misleading presentation. I actually made known at that time that I didn't have an original contemporaneous set, and that this was the best I could do, was to reverse engineer what I did have to best reflect for the sake of the Commission.
Yes, and you do make that clear in your statement at page 138, paragraph 48, where you set it out. I don't want to go through the exercise that we've just gone through, but we've managed, I think, to identify the source components of SS3. And I propose to read them out. I'll then give them in a list form to SAPS, and if SAPS has any difficulties with our list, SAPS can come back to us. But
before you do that, now just ask for some clarification, Mr. Justinson. When you said the first set of plans, do you mean the first set of plans that came to the attention of the evidence leaders?
Indeed, Commissioner.
Well, that's the IPA set.
That's the
set sent to IPA. Do we know when they were sent to IPA?
That we would have to ask from SAPS. The evidence leaders don't have that.
I take it it's before December.
I presume so, yes.
Anyway, we don't have to spend time on it. I'm sure the SAPS legal team will be able to tell us that once they've made the necessary investigation.
The chairperson would have been before mid-October, because that's when we received them from IPID. If we come to SS3, and I wonder if we can call SS3 up on the screen.
Not all of it.
And we'll run through it very quickly. This SS3 appears to us to have 8 components. The first component starts at what we see now and runs from pages 1 to 5, and that appears to be an original contingency plan for the 10th of August. Is a contemporaneous document. If we can then run through to page 6, that's the second component, and that again appears to us to be an original contingency plan for the 13th of August. If we can run through to page 14, this is the third component, and this, as far as we can work out, derives from a presentation which you created on the 13th of December 2012 called Ops Platinum 14 August 2012 Initial.pptx. If we can then run to page 23. This is the fourth component. Again, it's a presentation that you created. This presentation was created also on the 13th of December 2012, called Ops Platinum 14 August 2012 Sector Policing Plan, BPTX. we run forward to page 37. That's the fifth component, again deriving from a presentation you created in December last year. The presentation is called Ops Platinum 14 August 2012 Stage 1.pptx. Then if we can run to page 51. Sixth component, again a presentation that you created 14 December last year. Ops Platinum 15 August 2012 Stage 1.pptx. And then if we run forward to page 65. Again a presentation you created, Ops Platinum 16 August 2012 Stage 2.pptx. That was created 14 December last year. And the last component starts at page 85. And that was a presentation you created on 14 August last year called Ops Platinum 16 August 2012 Stage 3 BPTX.
Conrad, you said this was prepared on 14 August last year. It relates to something called the 16th of August. Something wrong there.
14 December. My mistake. Now, when you addressed these the creation of SS3 at page 138, 48.2 of your statement, you said the following. 48.1. During the second week of December, the legal team representing the police requested me to provide a copy of the presentation plan for each day of the operation. It was apparently required to be submitted as evidence while Brigadier Mkonazi was testifying. I explained that there were no daily versions because the daily presentations were built over as the operation proceeded on each consecutive day. I said that I would try to reverse engineer the presentation from the final product as it stood on 16 August 2012, as closely as I could recall, to represent what existed and what was shown on the 15th and 14th August 2012. Now, it's not altogether clear to us what you're saying there. Are you saying that the reverse engineering that you did in December relates not only to the 14th and 15th, but also the 16th, or only to the 14th and 15th?
It relates to the 16th as well.
Okay, because there is that sentence. I said I'd try to reverse engineer the presentation from the final product as it stood on 16 August 2012. You agree that the final product as it stood on 16 2012 is no longer in existence?
Yes, if I can actually refer to a plan that I believe is the closest to, it's your exhibit JJ 43A. No, sorry, I have the wrong one.
Well, Colonel, maybe what we can, I mean, you're welcome to refer to whatever you want, but I am going to take you through all of the contemporaneous documents that we've been able to find and in due course.
Yes.
And maybe that would be an appropriate place to make the comments that you want to make. But for present purposes, I just want to clarify that the final product as it stood on 16 August 2012 does no longer exist. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not even on your computer in that form as it was on the 16th?
No, Commissioner. As I say, I've worked extensively through these, and the closest I can get is a document called Ops Platinum 14 August 2012, which has most of the slides on it. All that's happened there is that the coordinating instructions have been expanded left and right.
Colonel, we'll get to that file in due course. It was last saved on the 23rd of August. You accept that?
the one I'm speaking about.
If it's Ops Platinum 14 August 2012.
23rd of August, that's correct.
So that was a full week after the event.
Yes.
Our submission in relation to that document is that there have been some very material changes to it since what appears to have been the contemporaneous document, but we'll get there in due course. If we can then move to what we know are contemporaneous documents, and at the outset I want to make clear that you are the person who gave us these contemporaneous documents, and I want to thank you for that. On the 21st of May this year, you invited us to look at your hard drive and to take the original files relating to plans off your hard drive, and those are the documents which I would like to discuss with you now. The first contemporaneous document is a document that you've already addressed in chief, which is the Google Earth plan that you designed on the night of the 13th, early morning of the 14th, which was called Ops Platinum Initial Plan KMZ and Ops Platinum Initial Plan 2 KMZ. Your Ops Platinum Initial Plan KMZ was handed in as J4. I'd like us to hand in Ops Platinum Initial Plan 2 KMZ as J49. That will be the electronic file with all of the icons ticked.
Give me the description. J49, how do I describe that correctly?
Google Earth file called Ops Platinum Initial Plan 2.kmz.
Initial Plan 2.kmz.
.kmz.
KMZ.
At M.
Thank you. So I need to read that and make sure I got it right. Google Earth file, Ops Platinum, Initial Plan 2.kmz.
And commissioners, we've tried to print out screenshots from this plan and from the key, because it's the interaction between the key and the plan that are important. And they appear at, the zoomed in version of the plan is at page 161 of your file 1. We seem to be stuck on Google Earth. I may ask Colonel Scott to assist us himself if we're starting to. We're going to have to zoom in quite a lot more than this. If we could possibly zoom in a little further. Thank you. Now, and if we could also just open the key to the temporary places of Platinum 2 KMZ on the left-hand side of the screen so that we can see higher up. It's in the box above that, higher up. And just click open, exactly, yes, thank you. I know we didn't want that. All right, we'll we'll do the illustration. I think that we may have now ticked all the boxes by mistake, but it may be that all the boxes are ticked by mistake. Colonel, can I ask you, do you have your copy up in front of you? Are there any boxes in the key that are unticked, that should be unticked at this point?
No.
Oh, good. Now, Colonel, you spoke to this plan in your evidence in chief, and I'd like to take you over some of the same ground. It may be a bit repetitive for you and for me, but I think it's quite important that the Commission and all parties present understand this plan fully. And to begin with, if we can just indicate that the key that one sees under Ops Platinum 2 KMZ, a copy of which appears at pages 160 and 159 of the Commissioner's bundle, is a key which will bring up or shut down individual icons that have been plotted on this Google Earth photograph. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you describe the plan in your evidence in chief, and if we can start with the blue and orange line. The blue and orange line that we see running round the copy with a T attached to it is the barbed wire cordon that was going to be drawn around the copy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, if one goes to the key and ticks cordon, which is third from the bottom, can we just untick cordon? The blue disappears. So the cordon is in fact the blue line. If we can retick cordon, and now if we can go down the key to 8 items from the bottom on the key where one sees an icon called Untitled Path, 8 from the bottom. No, further down. 8 from the bottom. It has three orange squares linked together with lines. That's it, Untitled Path. If you click that, that is the orange part of the chain around the cordon. And when we unclick it, what we see is that the blue cordon, in fact, goes all the way around the copy. So the blue line represents the barbed wire cordon around the copy. Is that correct?
They both do. The idea at this time was to deploy in 2 directions at the same time to speed up the deployment of the wire. So one would be going from south to north and the other from north to south, closing it off twice as fast as you would if you tried to just do it in one go.
Yes, I understand that, but if we remove Untitled Path, we're left with a blue line going around the copy called cordon.
Yes.
So that would represent barbed wire around the copy, would it not?
Yes.
And that blue line will see surfaces in a lot of other documents that are prepared from the period. The yellow bands that we see running from the eastern edge of the power station to the northern edge, or to the north of the copy, the 2 parallel yellow lines, those don't represent barbed wire.
No.
They represent the filtering line of Nyalas that is going to be placed between the informal settlement and the copy. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the Google Earth plan that you've seen here, it is so.
And if one goes back up into the key to 4 from the top, we'll see that they are described as Nyala line. So if we click that box, we see that the yellow lines disappear. If we can re-click it. In your evidence in
the record will not reveal what we saw. When it was clicked, those 2 parallel yellow lines disappeared, and when it was re-clicked, they came back.
In your evidence, thank you, Chairperson.
And they are reflected, as you said, in the key. as in yellow line. That's how that is.
Colonel, in your evidence in chief, you explained that little green vehicle, the little red vehicle, and the eye as an observation post that you had contemplated for the SDF and the NIU at what became to be known as Copy 3.
It was a reaction team. The two vehicles depicted the SDF and NIU reaction team. The eye itself depicted a smaller grouping that would have gone forward to set up an open post, which generally would be out of sight.
Sorry, the observation post would have been out of sight, or the reaction team would have been out of sight?
The hopeful outcome there was that the reaction teams would be out of sight behind Copy 3, what we know now as Copy 3, and the eye representing the observation post would be a small team of task members going closer to the front of Copy 3 to observe actions at what we now know as Copy 1.
Thank you, Colonel. And the last icon I'd like to address is that pink shaded shape to the southwest of the copy. That corresponds to the key item untitled polygon. If we can click on untitled polygon, at which point the pink shape disappears, and then re-click, at which point it returns. That, if I understood your evidence correctly, was the processing zone where suspects would be processed for arrest after the operation had successfully been completed. Is that correct?
That's correct. They would have exited through the razor wire where the orange and blue line would have come together and been brought to that area specifically for processing this.
Can we just click again on to get the orange line back, to click again at that icon which is untitled part? Thank you. So they would have been taken out. Had you clarified whether it would be to the north, at the northwest or the southeast?
Well, wherever there would be a gap created there, either at the orange and blue, because I know that's where two lines would come together, or maybe a little bit into the blue. The detail of this plan was not splashed out to that level, but that's where it was envisioned on the opposite side of the township that the suspects would be brought into the opposite direction.
Thank you, Colonel. At this stage, this is all that I want to address with this plan. If I can then take you to your statement where you deal with the plan, and you deal with it from page 28, paragraph 6.29 to page 33, paragraph 6.28.
Paragraph 30?
Page 33, paragraph 6.28. And I'm not going to take you to specific parts of that treatment. It's merely for reference purposes. But you do say that it was created after you had a discussion with Colonel Marafe and some other POPs officers on the night of the Monday going through to the early morning of the Tuesday, night of the 13th, early morning of the 14th.
That's correct.
It's not clear from your statement whether you were the author of all aspects of this original plan, or whether any specific contribution was made by Colonel Marafe and the other POPs officers. Can you recall any specific suggestions that were made by Colonel Marafe or the other POPs officers which were incorporated in the plan that we've just seen?
I don't. However, I must say that initially when the operation was concluded, even myself had forgotten about this whole initial plan as it stood then, because I worked it into the phase 3 to be. I was only reminded later of it, but I don't recall. It was more a work session where I basically went through a problem-solving exercise with them to say this is what our problem is that we're facing, this is where the possible problem is. As I say, that's when Mr. Sinclair also informed us, but it's only a few on the copy at night time. And then can recall suggesting the encirclement of them. I don't really recall inputs given by the POPs members, but it's not to say that they didn't. As I say, it was a time when the sleep was a little bit...
And Colonel, if I can just pick up something you said there, you said you don't, your memory of, I'm paraphrasing obviously, your memory of this initial plan is hazy because you then worked it into stage 3. What do you mean by that?
Well, the idea was when we actually, as I said, it was an opportunistic time that we could see if there were so few. And as I say, reasoning at that time that, and it was cold that night, I think it was close to 0 degrees, if there were people staying on that kopje, it's possibly because they didn't want to return back to their hostels or to their homes for good reason. The reasoning process again that if the police were there informing, maybe somebody would have identified where perpetrators from the Monday were living and they were scared of being picked up. Other than that, that they could possibly be part of the leadership, sort of the hardcore group of the greater, at that stage, what we thought to be the striking group of 3,000. So to me it made sense that whoever's on the kopje is there for a good reason, and that if we could initially apprehend and arrest that group, possibly that would be the leadership of the striking group, and it would not have the impact it is having up until that stage. So I've actually lost track of the question you asked me.
Maybe I can remind you. You're speaking to the logic of that original plan and how it was generated. My question was slightly different. You said, and again I'm paraphrasing, you can't recall details of the process by which it was generated, and you suggested that this was due to the fact that you later built that plan into stage 3. And I was trying to understand what you meant by that and why it would affect your memory of how the plan was generated.
The time spent with Colonel Marafi and the other POPs members was maybe 20 minutes to half an hour when we went over this. We came up with the initial idea of the encirclement and a filtering line. When I went with Mr. Sinclair thereafter to go and scout out the area and just have a look at the actual environment, and we came back, Colonel Marafi and them had left. After going to sleep, was all of 2 hours odd, and when I got back up is when I actually got to making what you see here and reasoning on my own at this time, the positioning of forces more specifically, who would do, getting more into the detail of what needed to happen. But at that stage I was on my own at the job. But as I say, it then later, when this couldn't happen, because I was expecting that there would be a JOCOM meeting somewhere around 6 o'clock, because this needed to happen early while there were still very few strikers with the kopje. Some of the aspects of the greater strategy from 1 to 6 are even found in this initial planning. Things like, even though we were going to encircle them, there was still going to be dialogue to negotiate with them to come out. We didn't want to have to go to a tactical option, etc. So all the way, this is dovetailing with the greater strategy to come. When I eventually get to that, this strategy here is taken as a possibility for a tactical option for the police still. But considering that it didn't work on the Tuesday morning, and at the time when I was briefing General Annandale initially, it was viable to still do this on a Wednesday morning. Now that the forces would arrive with there, the commanders could be briefed, we could prepare properly. So it was put in as a phase 3, as the tactical option for a Wednesday morning, should we decide to have to go that route due to negotiations or dialogue not working on the Tuesday. I followed that. It's still not clear to me why that affected your memory of who contributed what at the beginning, but it's not a major issue. I don't need to take it further at this stage. I do want to raise one further issue in relation to this plan. You say at page 110 of your statement, 35.7, paragraph 35.7, in describing what informed you in this process. Say the following. What was to be achieved according to the strategic guidance was reflected by the Provincial Commission's expectations and is reflected, I think, as reflected in the
occurrence book entry 37 made on Monday at 12:45 by Lieutenant General Mbombo when she visited the JOC at Lonman stated, JOC visit, and as shown, the different points of gathering. The planning has been adjusted to disperse the gatherings. All police officials on duty to conduct searches and confiscate all dangerous weapons, all those that can be identified on the footage should be picked up and deployments to key strategic areas should be enhanced. In terms of our policing on crowd management, all members to conduct themselves within the limits of this policy unless the situation dictates otherwise, ensure that peace prevails. Signed, Lieutenant General Mbombo. So you would have been guided by the fact that in relation to crowd management issues, the Provincial Commissioner wanted members to conduct themselves within the limits of SAP's crowd management policy.
I didn't, at the time when I was setting up that initial plan, I didn't yet know this entry in the OB. This only became knowledgeable to me, I think later on the Tuesday, even possibly later than that. But I mean, why I'm saying is because the mission still reflects what she's put here. Maybe a lapse in my memory, but because when I had the meeting with Colonel Marafi and the two other, we were actually in the initial East JOC. We moved off to a side room.
I have a difficulty with reconciling that answer with what you say in paragraph 35.7. Back to page 110. What was to be achieved, and you're talking now about what was to be achieved in that very first planning process, according to the strategic guidance, was reflected by the Provincial Commissioner's expectations as reflected in OB entry 37. So you're saying, in fact, you weren't aware of OB entry 37 when you engaged in that process?
No, I'm saying I don't recall. It's a possibility that I was made aware of it already. The same as with Colonel Marafi and the inputs. We're talking, I'd arrived there after a day's work, but being going, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. It's sketchy. There's not much I can remember from that meeting or what we actually did discuss there. There's certain points which I can go back to. The inputs of Mr. Sinclair, for instance, because those trigger memories. But the full extent of what we said around that briefing table or what we saw, I can't recollect clearly.
What did you intend to convey by that opening sentence of paragraph 35.7? What were you trying to say to us in the Commission now?
That in an operation of this magnitude, there are certain strategic guidelines which need to guide the mission. And you need to sit and listen to your strategic officers or your generals within the piece. For instance, earlier the evening, the same thing when the National Commissioner was there, listening to what the expected outcome would be, or the strategy that they wanted to have followed. That combined, obviously, with the Constitution to keep us in line with what we need to do. And then the OB of the General Mbombo from earlier that day, being a strategic officer, also complements the mission as it was laid out.
So you, in engaging, so you were trying to convey that engaging in this planning process, you had to be guided by the expectations of your senior officers, or provincial and national commissioner, as reflected in the occurrence book entry 37. What was that reference there for?
Well, the occurrence book 30 is a 37 made earlier that day reflects what the provincial commissioner expected. Some of the expectations of what needed to happen in Marikana. And although it was made, I believe, before the event on the 13th with the incident where the police and members of the strikers were killed or attacked, it still has prevalence to run through the operation. It's still a guiding statement that needed to be observed.
Okay, so that had to guide you through the operation.
It was one of the guiding statements, yes.
You can't recall today whether you were aware of it when you set out to do your initial plan or not?
No, I don't recall that.
Well, let's look at that guidance that should have guided you.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a question before you get there? You were guided by certain things, were you not?
Yes, Commissioner.
You can't remember whether you were guided by this particular statement by the Provincial Commissioner. But would it be fair to say that what guided you was in effect in line with what she had written?
Well, it is as well, Chairperson. But as I say, that night there was a meeting, possibly an hour or longer, which involved all the senior officers. And even from that, I can't recall an hour's worth of meeting. That's why I say it's possible that this was even mentioned to some degree there. But when discovering it in the OB, and I can't put a finger on it when I did discover it, but instinctively, it also falls within what I would have put in the mission anyway.
I take it. Well, we find out when they give evidence, but I imagine it's probable that Colonel Murafi was aware, he was around earlier, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was aware of what the Provincial Commissioner had written.
Yes,
And he was, of course, one of the people with whom you discussed the matter
that's correct.
when you formulated your first plan.
That's correct.
So probably, I'm just putting a probability to now, but probably if what you had proposed was contrary to what the Provincial Commissioner had said, he would have pointed that out to you.
Yes, that's true.
So even if you weren't directly influenced by what the Provincial Commissioner had said, had written, I take it we can assume as a probability that you would be at least indirectly influenced by it, because Marafi, who presumably may well have known what the Provincial Commissioner had written, was present and agreed with what you did.
It could be that, yes, Chairperson.
Well, Colonel, I hate to take issue with the chairperson's probabilities, but I do want to test that proposition. You said earlier that your meeting with Colonel Murafe, if I understood, if I recollect your evidence correctly, was I think, did you say 20 to 30 minutes?
Yes.
And
Estimating.
and it wasn't a meeting at which detail was discussed, is that correct?
Not the detail of the plan, no.
Right. That only emerged after you had thereafter met with Mr. Sinclair and then had a couple of hours sleep and...
Mr. Sinclair was part of the meeting with Colonel Marafi. Mr. Sinclair simply took me for an orientation to show me from the ground, orientate me to the environment. But the detail of the plan was set up somewhere around 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, onwards to about 6 o'clock, 6:30.
May I just ask a question? Did you rely on the knowledge of Colonel Marafi and anyone from POPs as to what had happened prior to your arrival?
Commissioner, I don't recall having much to do with Colonel Marafi before that meeting, but I recall him being part of the meeting with the National Commissioner, where he explained that day what happened from his point of view. I remember he was pretty broken because I think he had to carry one of his colleagues off to the hospital, so he was pretty emotional.
Colonel, there's just one aspect of this guidance that I want to take up with you. In terms of our policing on crowd management, all members to conduct themselves within the limits of this policy unless the situation dictates otherwise. So in relation to crowd management, the Provincial Commissioner wanted members to conduct themselves within the limits of SAP's crowd management policy. That's correct. Will you accept?
That's her statement before the incident of the 13th, yes, but that's what she says.
But that's what you said you were going to be guided by.
I was guided by certain elements within her statement. And if I can point those out to you, disperse the gatherings, conduct searches and confiscate all dangerous weapons. Those that are identified on the footage need to be picked up. Phase 5. Deployment to key strategic areas. The NIU was deployed over that time period of the Tuesday, Wednesday, even I think the morning of the Thursday, to strategic areas which looked like they would be targeted by the strikers. then she speaks to disarming. Conduct searches and confiscate all dangerous weapons. So as I say, it's a strategic statement that we need to operationalise, which impacted. Whether it impacted at the time of the initial plan, it's difficult for me to say. As I say, my memory's not very good concerning that evening, but it definitely impacted throughout the day on the Tuesday with the coming together with a final strategy.
Well, I'm interested in that sentence in terms of our policing on crowd management, all members to conduct themselves within the limits of this policy unless the situation dictates otherwise. The policy to which the Provincial Commission is referring is presumably the policy embodied in Standing Order 262. Would you accept that?
It's her understanding of, if she's aware of the policy of Standing Order 262, then yes, it would be.
Well, where is SAB's policy in relation to crowd management set out?
At this time it is in the National Instruction 262, but the policy itself is a policy that is derived by the Minister's Office.
You see, why I'm concerned about this is that you say at page 143 of your statement, paragraph 52.5, I was not trained in the current Standing Order 262 and was not aware of its contents. So you had no knowledge of the contents of Standing Order 262.
Yeah, but you must remember, something preludes 262. The SABS didn't create the Standing Order 262 in the absence because there was a void. They updated the previous Standing Order, for instance. Now, I was trained on the previous versions, and if you look even at this, the proposed draft National Instruction, 90% of it is Standing Order 262, again with amendments. So what I was trained in still covered the tactical options and in essence, the tolerance of how public order policing should be carried out.
Would it be fair to say that Standing Order 262 in its current form represents an attempt by the SABC to harmonise crowd management policy with the requirements of the Constitution?
If I look at Standing Order 262 in reading it after the fact and looking at the Regulation of Gatherings Act, we found that Standing Order 262 was set up to complement the Regulation of Gatherings Act. Now, if you actually take the time to work through Standing Order 262, there's only one paragraph in Standing Order 262, being paragraph 14, which actually deals with spontaneous events. The previous 13 paragraphs are introductory definitions and the like, but mainly dealing with a responsible protester or striking group who come with a convener, there's a responsible person from the local governments, the authorised person from the police, and it's all about that and how we do this as responsible citizens of the country. I don't think that was the case at Marikana. This was more when I walked in, it would become a spontaneous strike, which one paragraph of Standing Order 262 actually speaks to. That doesn't take us away from having to operate within the principles from the 262, still appointing an overall commander, operational commanders, the force continuing, etc. But in understanding 262 in its holistic form, there are many aspects therein, like the producing of tactical plans, which need to go back to the operational commander, which just doesn't have the time to be done. When 262 was drafted, seeing events which are maybe a week in the coming, and there's sufficient time to set up these plans and have tactical plans drafted and have the plan reviewed and have forces properly briefed and put into positions. So when one actually takes 262 as applicable to Marikana, it has to be applied as best as possible with the principles and obviously with the paragraph 14, which speaks to the spontaneity of the event.
Well, Colonel, let me ask this. You say you weren't aware of the contents of Standing Order 262. Were you aware of its existence?
I can't even say that I know that there are rules and regulations within SABC which regulate public order policing. But to say I knew that Standing Order 262 by number dealt specifically with POPs, I've never read the documents specifically, no.
Was there, before 262 came out, was there, to your knowledge, was there a standing order which dealt with public order policing?
Chairperson, I would need to go and check, but there are documents that deal with public order policing prior to Standard Order 262. Whether they were simply training documents, because I did the Operational Commanders training course, I think it was the year 2001 or 2002, and there we were trained on pretty much what exists in Standard Order 262, the tactical options, the force continuum, etc. So where they got that from, I'm sure it has to be in some form of a document within SABC.
Coming back to the question that I asked, were you aware that there was a current SABC document setting out SABC policy on crowd management, about which, the contents of which you were not aware of? Were you aware that there was something out there which dealt with crowd management policy, but that you didn't know what it said?
I was aware that there would be some form of policy, yes. I wasn't aware of the contents of the most up-to-date one, yes.
And you were also aware that you didn't know what it said?
262.
262 or whatever the current one was?
Yes.
Did you disclose that at any stage to Colonel Marafe?
No.
So Colonel Marafe wouldn't have known at the time that you weren't aware of what 262 said?
No.
Did you disclose it to Major General Annandale?
No.
Would he have been aware of the fact that you didn't know what 262 said?
He would not be, no.
Colonel, moving on from 262, we're still talking about that plan that you designed in the early hours of Tuesday morning. You say in your statement at page 50, paragraph 7.25, that your plan was first presented to the JOCCOM at Tuesday at 1400 hours.
That's the phase one. The plan that dealt initially to get the police contingent to go and deploy in phase one. Yes.
Well, let's go to, if we can just go to page 50.
What are we looking at? Can I ask you a question? What is meant by a structured document? The first briefing I gave to a structured document, which included the different police commanders, was on Tuesday at about 1400. That's what the first sentence of this paragraph says. What do you mean by a structured document? Do you mean one which included the different police commanders?
That's correct, Chairperson. One where all commanders that were present were actually seated around the tables. And there was a chairperson appointed who was General Annandale, who then took the meeting.
Had you given a briefing to an unstructured document before?
I gave a very brief briefing, if I can put it that way, to the commanders that were available on the sector policing plan. That was earlier on that Tuesday, when General Pembe was present, and I asked if we could at least send the police members out to stop patrolling so long and familiarising themselves with the area, amongst other things. There was a briefing given there. It took me some...
The JOCCOM had already been set up the day before, on Monday.
Well,
So was that meeting about which you're not talking, could that be described as a meeting of the JOCCOM, or was it not?
Well, Chairperson, the JOC is set up, the Joint Operations Centre, the JOCCOM being the committee, the actual Joint Operation Command Committee, or Joint Operations Centre Committee. That, to my knowledge up to that time, had not sat officially yet. There was no real roll call of who was there, etc., and none according to agenda of sort. There had been meetings prior to that. For instance, the Monday night where the National Commissioner was there. There were senior role players there, but those were more informative meetings. Let's sit down, let's hear what happened. Later, again, second meeting to look for a strategy to go forward on, to listen to the inputs of the different commanders and so on. But the official meeting where a job structure of the representatives or the ambassadors of every unit, if I could put it that way, were present, seated or standing around the job. That happened for the first time where I was present on about 2 o'clock on the Tuesday afternoon.
Colonel, just to go back to page 50, paragraph 7.25. The first briefing I gave to a structured JobCom, which included the different police commanders, was on Tuesday at about 1400 hours. The commanders were called back from the sector patrols to hear the operational strategy based on phases 1 to 6. Because of the lack of time and clarity of information, I could not formulate an official plan in the operational plan format as set out in the operational commanders training course. Now, the official plan to which you refer in that last sentence presumably is a document like those first 2 documents in SS3.
That's correct.
But you say in your statement that the commanders were called back to hear the operational strategy based on phases 1 to 6. And then you amplified it in your evidence in chief on the 5th of September, pages 13441, where you said, all were fully briefed according to the strategy, according to the PowerPoint presentation. What you'd see on the screen, the Google Earth, is normally a hyperlink to the presentation. I'd normally put a little Google Earth icon into the corner of one of the slides, which I would click on, and it hyperlinks it to this program that comes up, and I speak to this program and eventually go back to the presentation and continue again. So, would it be correct to say that that Google Earth plan that we have been looking at earlier today, Ops Platinum Initial Plan 2.kmz, would have been part of what you would have presented as in the course of presenting the operational strategy based on phases 1 to 6?
I can only speak to the best of my recollection, but as you saw when you untick icons, they fall away. And when speaking to phase 1, we would have found the Nyala line left in position to now represent the Nyala in position as in their monitoring and negotiation group. And I think that even continues through to the Thursday, where the same line represents the Nyala line. Instead of going to recreate new icons, which is timeless, the icons that the members see on the screen now represent phase 1. And you unclick everything that you don't want them to see.
Yes, but what you say in your statement is that they were called back from the sector patrols to hear the operational strategy based on phases 1 to 6, not just phase 1.
Yeah, that's correct. But further in the statement, I actually mentioned that only phase 1 was discussed in detail, and the others were only mentioned by name due to the time constraints. And at that stage, also due to the lack of detail in the planning of the rest of the phases. It was a strategy that was presented to them in detail, the strategy being 1 to 6, not the detail within each of the phases, except for phase 1, because that's what we need to get them back out into the field to go do.
Now, would anyone walking away from that meeting have realized that the plan for tactical action, if that plan was to eventuate, would involve encircling the copy?
But at that time, I think it would have mentioned the word encircle, yes. Phase 3 would have mentioned the word encircle.
Okay, if we can then go back to some more contemporaneous documents. The first is a document called Ops Platinum Aerial Grid. It will be exhibit J47. It's at pages 85 to 86.
How do you describe it?
It's a PowerPoint presentation called Ops Platinum Aerial Grid. And
sorry, you did give the page.
85 to 86 in file 1, and it's J47. If we can pull it up.
Yes, so we'll mark it then J47, and the description of the is, as you said, abstract and aerial grid, page 86, slide 1.
Thank you, Chairperson. And if we can just quickly run through the slides on these grids. There are only 2 of them, so we can go to the next one. Now, so what we see are fairly long-range aerial shots of the Marikana area. For present purposes, I'd merely draw your attention to the fact that that blue barbed wire cordon is around the Kopi in these aerial grids. Would you confirm that?
Yes, but I think you're misinterpreting what it means in this context now. As I said, when you set up that Google Earth program, you've got certain icons already in place. They are not named on the map, so to reuse them for other purposes. And if you can see, the name of that map is called Hotspot. And then the blue is showing the environment now where the protesters are grouped together with a T for the target area on the Kopi one. That's not depicting that there's an encirclement plan in place. This was given out to those commanders on that Tuesday for the purposes of reference to the hotspot area.
But Colonel, what you've used to demarcate the hotspot happens to coincide exactly with what your plan says the barbed wire cordon will be.
Maybe so, but what I'm telling you now is that that doesn't show that there must be a barbed wire cordon put around the people on the Tuesday afternoon. I mean, the pictures that show the deployment of the Tuesday afternoon clearly show that the Nyalas are standing in position and monitoring the negotiation is ongoing. If they were given this and told to go and encircle the barbed wire, then that would have been what they were surely going to do.
No, Colonel, I'm not suggesting they were sent out to encircle. They clearly weren't. But what I am suggesting is that that blue line around the Kopi, after any SAPS officer had been briefed on your plan and your encirclement plan, would have been understood by a SAPS officer to represent where a barbed wire cordon would go if barbed wire was ultimately going to be deployed.
That may be so, but they were never briefed on the initial plan.
Well, let's go a bit further then. These, I understand, it would be the slides which would have been, or may have been, the slides which were, the gridded slides which were printed out for distribution at the mid-morning drop on the 14th, the unofficial drop on the 14th, where you briefed commanders present on sector policing. It's something that you address at page 38, paragraph 7.11 of your statement. Is that correct?
These were created early, but there was a different set of slides printed out for the sector policing deployment. Those are the slides which actually show the different 4 sectors with the numbers of the sectors in each of those slides.
What are these gridded maps for? What were they for?
Well, this was just of the environment at the time. So this was, if I'm looking at my properties, this was made at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is way after the Kopi had filled up already. So this is to assist. And it's not to say that at this stage I'm already thinking to the phase 1, 2, 3 to 6 approach and preparing for something. But in the meantime, while I'm preparing some understanding that police can't just sit back while the planning officers are waiting. Something needs to, police presence needs to go into the vicinity. Thus the sector policing plan is initiated and put into play. Whilst this preparation of stages 1 to, or phases 1 to 6 is still being put into document format for the General and eventually arrived at about 11.
So, Colonel, are you saying then that this was just a document that you prepared for yourself as a working document as opposed to one that was going to be distributed?
It was one that was meant to be given to the members to orientate them also to the environment. And was later used as part of their deployment for that day when they went out. When they deployed into the phase 1.
Well, let's just next one, which is the sector patrols document, and we can possibly end up comparing the two. You produced a presentation called Ops Platinum Zones Tuesday 14th Visible Policing, which is JJ51 and appears on pages 87 to 91.
Sorry, can you use the triple J? Is it JJ or triple J?
The triple J51.
Triple J51. How do I understand it?
A PowerPoint presentation, Ops Platinum Zones, Tuesday 14th, Visible Policing.
So triple J51 will be PowerPoint presentation, Ops Platinum Zones, Tuesday 14th Visible Policing.
Yes, Chairperson.
And that's pages
That's pages 87 to 91.
of Farlam.
Indeed, Chairperson. Now, this appears to depict the sector patrols that you discuss from page 37, paragraph 7.8 of your statement. Is that correct? 1, 2, 3, and 4 are sectors.
That's correct.
I'd again draw your attention to the blue line around the copy.
That is so, that's showing the area where the protesters are getting together with the T. The line, as you rightfully pointed out earlier, when it had an orange part to it, showed the razor wire encirclement. That was envisioned for that first light. Understanding too that I still saw that same initial plan as a viable option as a stage 3 for Wednesday morning, should things not go according to plan on Tuesday. But here it is depicted to the members as being the environment where the strikers are gathered.
But is that the environment where the strikers were gathered? Were there any strikers gathered as far south as that line goes?
That line's basically just covering copy 1 and 2. Surrounding copy 1 and 2.
Well, in due course, we'll get to various closer-up images of that line. What I want to put to you is that it covers an area in which no strikers were gathered and which corresponds exactly with where your barbed wire line was going to be drawn. But we'll deal with that when we look at bigger pictures where it can be clearer.
It may be so, but for clarification, to go into Google to recreate that line, when you already have something showing the environment that the protesters are literally within, it doesn't make sense then to go to recreate a whole new line. And how would you accurately depict them? They are sitting on what parts of the copy, etc. So in that general vicinity are where the protesters are gathered.
But you already have a T marking the target, which is the general vicinity where the protesters are guarded. Why do you need a blue line around the T?
Because again, the T is specifically on the spot.
We'll take this further as it goes on with the other documents going on. Now, presumably these gridded maps would have been distributed to the teams that had to do the sector policing on the 14th. And if we can just quickly run through the full presentation, which will show the full gridded maps. Would it be correct that the teams that had to do the sector policing, patrolling, would have been given these gridded maps?
They were briefed on them initially, and then I needed to find a printer as well to print them out on. So I'm not sure at what stage, but they were given them at some stage. They were given them when they went out to go and do the sector policing.
Okay. Colonel, the next file, contemporaneous file that we have, is a screenshot called A.jpg, And it looks like it may well have been your source file for the slide that we see at page 44 of SS3, which is describing stage 2 on the 14th of August. So if we can first call up the file, a.jpg, it will be J 9.1, J 9.1. Commissioners, I have a page reference, page 200. I'm afraid I don't have a file reference. We'll come back to you after the lunch break with that. And if we can then cut to page 44 of the of SS3. It's file 3.1, Commissioners. Sorry, have we got page 40?
Sorry, you said file 3.1, page 44.
SS3, page 44. SS3 has two slides to a page. If we can just scroll down to the bottom of the page. And it appears to us that the photograph that we see as a.jpg is in all likelihood the source file for that slide in SS3. It depicts, well, can I ask you, is it the source file for that slide?
Yes.
Now, that slide in SS3 is describing phase 2 on the 14th of August. And if I look at the file a.jpg, it appears to be depicting what you describe in your statement as paragraph 7.2.1 on page 44, if we can go there, as phase 2 brackets Tuesday version.
I think we need to look at the properties of that source document you're talking about. It was only created on the 16th.
Well, I know it was only created on the 16th. I'm going to come back to that with you in due course. But what it describes is what you describe in relation to phase 2 Tuesday version.
Do you agree with that, Colonel?
Do you agree with it, Colonel?
Chairperson, the phase 2 was always a show of force and a preposition for a possible phase 3. So,
yes, I was going to interrupt you, but as it appears from the heading to 7.21.2 of the statement, Exhibit H20, there were various versions of phase 2.
yes.
And this heading indicates that we were talking in 7.21.2, the various subparagraphs of that, about phase 2 Tuesday version.
Yes.
So what you're being asked by Council is what we're looking at here on the screen now, is that, does that link up with what you set out in 7.21.2 statement, i.e. the Tuesday version of phase 2?
Well, Chairperson, as I'm saying, the picture you see has got the same strategy, but the picture was only created on the Thursday morning, the 16th, at 8:29, if I'm not mistaken. So the strategy existed on Tuesday already, and the strategy was always a show of force and a prelude to stage 3. So what's mentioned on the Tuesday already, but is not shown in any way, is similar to what is depicted now. I think the only changes that were brought in is that bringing forward immediate reaction areas, or bringing forward the task force and the NIU to be immediate reaction areas, to be closer to respond in case there was a threat posed during phase 2. That, I think, is the only real difference from what it Tuesday to what it was on the Thursday.
So you've identified what are the only differences between what that photograph depicts and what you've described as the Phase 2 Tuesday version?
Well, on the wider picture, there would have been a forward holding area too, as well. At this time, I don't really recall if there were any other minor tactical details changed from the Phase 2 as it was envisioned on Tuesday, as to how it was briefed and deployed on Thursday. And I know that this is obviously talking as well to, because over here there is no immediate reaction area. The immediate reaction force is still at the forward holding area. But
sorry, just to illustrate what the Colonel is speaking to, I wonder if we can call up that file a.jpg again. So on this file there is no immediate reaction areas.
That's a close-up. If you go to B, this is A. If you go to B, it now shows you in B the wider area, because the immediate reaction areas are not here in picture. If you zoom out, which is picture B, then you see the green box, which is the immediate reaction areas, and you see forward holding area 2 and 1. And that file is basically created at the same time. One is just a zoomed in. As I said, I always create an area which is wider and a closer up which is of the actual operational area.
Well, let's look at this picture as in the light of what you say at paragraph 7.21.2 in your document Phase 2, in relation to Phase 2 Tuesday version. And if you can identify what is depicted on this document. You say, Phase 2 would be an escalation of force levels by the police by bringing the reserve forward from the forward holding area. This would be to provide a show of force to dissuade illegal activity or planned violence towards the police in the Phase 1 deployment strategy. Phase 2 was only to be initialized when the threat level against the police increased or it became evident the strikers would want to mobilize as a mass group to move to anticipated key points behind the police line towards the east. The POP reserves in armored vehicles from the forward holding area would reinforce the Phase 1 police monitoring and negotiation line at the Kopi as a show of force to dissuade the crowd aggression being focused towards the police members. Am I correct then that that would be reflected in those 5 blue vehicles? 5 blue vehicles. The 6 vehicles are barbed wire vehicles.
You're talking to the reserves that are brought forward?
Yes.
No. They're not shown on this map.
Okay.
But they are iconic. It's not because they are necessarily, well, those are showing the 5 negotiation and monitoring vehicles. As I said, on the Tuesday there were 7, on the Wednesday there were 5, and I think on the Thursday there were also 5. And obviously the 6 razor line Nialas. But it's not showing the reserve forces being forward there.
Well, let's go to the next paragraph. The POP armored vehicles with barbed wire trailers were to be pre-positioned between the police line and the strikers. That's the 6 vehicles, 6 orange vehicles with their barbed wire tracks in orange. Is that not correct?
6 red vehicles, yes, with orange line.
Okay. The pre-positioning between the police and the strikers would allow the police to rapidly deploy the barbed wire in a simultaneous action. The physical deployment of the razor wire would serve as a contingency plan for the Phase 2 deployment by closing off the neutral area to create a police safe area should the strikers approach the police at any time in a large group with potentially aggressive motives. So the line in which they would close is that barbed wire line in orange.
That's correct.
This, I thought, should prevent confrontation, considering that possibly POPs members may need to employ less than lethal force to prevent any strikers breaking through the weak points between the Nyalas and the trailer which carried the razor wire. I plan to have TRT teams to move to each Nyala when it deployed the razor wire to support the POP members. So those TRT teams, as I see it, are those 6 soldier icons or uniformed armed icons. To to the east of the barbed wire line and the Nyala line. Is that correct? And that yellow, those yellow bands again would represent the Nyala line as they would have on the first plan from Tuesday.
Yes.
And I'd like to put it to you again that the blue line, in this context, given that we're talking about a pre-positioning for phase 3, would have to represent a barbed wire cordon around the copy.
No, there's no basis for that transition input.
Well, let the witness answer the question, Mr. Chairman.
I'm objecting to the question.
What do you say about the objections?
Phase 2 is a pre-positioning for phase 3. If we have Nyalas with barbed wire being pre-positioned in front of a blue line around the copy, which has previously been used as a signifier for the barbed wire cordon around the copy, I would submit that the question is a legitimate question. If the witness says that takes issue with me, the witness can take issue with me, but you must answer the question.
No, Chair. The witness says the blue line is made by him to indicate the area where the stars are. That's a direct evidence.
That was in the context of a completely different picture.
It still remains the same in this.
Well, the witness is actually answering the question, so the objection need not be persistent. Gary, Mr. Christensen, please proceed. You've got 5 minutes. We'll take lunch about 1 o'clock. When you reach a suitable stage in the cross-examination, let me know.
Well, let me take this one further with you, Colonel. Phase 2 is a pre-positioning for phase 3, is that not so?
Phase 2 is a pre-positioning for phase 3, yes.
And now on Tuesday, the phase 3 involved encircling the copy.
At that time, yes. But it was also said that before that operation would commence, all forces would be returned and briefed thoroughly before it would happen.
No, Colonel, I don't understand that to be what your evidence in your statement is in relation to phase 2, because the logic of the pre-positioning of phase 2 in advance of phase 3 was to have your barbed wire and Nyala vehicles in position so that they could proceed to phase 3 quickly.
Yes.
Is that not correct?
Yes.
So the barbed wire and Nyalas are not going to return.
No. The commanders would return, or were supposed to return to receive the briefing to go back to there before any phase 3. And I think that's mentioned once or twice in the briefings that were given over the days.
But if you are pre-positioning with a view to being in position to do something later, and you want to be close to where you're going to draw your barbed wire cordon, in those circumstances, I would have thought it would be logical planning to identify where the cordon is going to have to be placed if you are going to have to draw the cordon.
You see, the problem I have with your line of questioning is you're taking a picture that was set up after the JOCOM briefing, after the morning of the 16th, where it was decided already by that time that encirclement was not going to be the tactical option utilized. And you're using that now to show the 14th. On the 14th, as I said, the depth of the planning was not yet done. The strategy and the idea was in place. How we were even going to, we were going to place Nyalas, obviously, for stage 2 between the crease line, but it was never thought out in detail or depth at that time. The concentration was on the phase 1 to get the crease out there to start the dialogue and negotiations. The actual more detail of what happens in a phase 2 and a phase 3, for that matter, is looked at on the Wednesday.
Well, Colonel, I have 2 problems with that answer. The first is when you went back in December to reverse engineer slides that would depict what the plan was on Tuesday the 14th, you used this slide as phase 2 for Tuesday the 14th. That appears in SS3.
And I mentioned in my statement that the time that I had to reverse engineer these was literally a day. It would take an afternoon. I was rushed to have to do this, so I put the reverse engineered version together as quickly as I could. But how does that 4 or 5 months after the fact, deal with what's actually happening at the time when this is actually created on the morning of the 16th.
Colonel, it was last saved on the morning of the 16th.
It was first saved, I think, on the morning of the 16th.
We can investigate that. But whether it was first saved or last saved on the morning of the 16th, it reflects what your Phase 2 Tuesday plan describes. Is that not so?
The picture doesn't do justice to what was envisioned. As I say, the Phase 2 on the Tuesday was in strategy form. It was a good idea to have a show of force, to dissuade any violent confrontation towards the police. It was a good idea to pre-place razor wires so that if we needed to form a barrier, it could be done. The exact positionings and so on of that at that time were not thrashed out or looked at as such. And the Phase 3, as we know it at that time even, was to be a predetermined operation where vehicles could be moved. At that time, the Phase 3 was encirclement. But to have the line of the Nyalas where they are now, and to then simply deploy them, you obviously are not going to encircle the group. The Phase 3 at that time on the Tuesday was envisioned to be a predetermined police action for the Wednesday morning. Any operation that would have had to be carried out on the Tuesday afternoon due to the threat of attack was simply going to be a contingency action where the razor wires would be closed up so that the strikers and the police could remain apart from each other. But the envisioned actioning of a Phase 3 was something that was going to be predetermined, pre-briefed. I'm talking on the Tuesday now, and effected, in my opinion, first light on the Wednesday morning, not on the Tuesday afternoon.
Colonel, I'm not suggesting this slide was handed out to people on the Tuesday. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm suggesting is it depicts what you describe in your statement as the Phase 2 Tuesday version.
It does depict that. That was what was envisioned.
Well, then maybe we've been having an argument at cross purposes. That is the only...
I think the issue is that you're moving to say that this was already the idea on a Tuesday and that encirclement was the order of the day all the way through, which is not so.
We'll get there and we'll get to examine each piece of evidence as we go along. But Chairperson, at this stage, it may be convenient.
Commissioner, anyone wants to ask a question before we take it?
Well, if that blue line around this represents the encirclement, did you at any stage have sufficient number of Nyalas with barbed wire to cover whichever that area is that depicts there?
Then, I think at the time when I was looking at the initial encirclement, I was hopeful, but I worked it out to be about 700 odd meters that we would need to cover. But what we do have is 6 vehicles, and what came to my knowledge is that with 6 vehicles we're going to be way too close. It may be enough to encircle the protesters at the courthouse, but we're going to be way too close to them. We'd literally have the members doing the encirclement, the rolling out of that wire and pulling it out within 10-15 meters of the strikers, which would have been way too dangerous in my opinion. So we needed to look at a bigger circle, if encirclement was going to happen. And this is what brought up discussions on the Wednesday about the fact that we just don't have enough wire to actually safely do what we envision doing, for that matter, if the group is that large.
I ask a question before we take lunch, just to make sure I understand what's going on. Is it said that this, what we now see, represents the situation as you reverse engineered it, admittedly, for Tuesday afternoon?
The concept.
Yes.
Yes, the concept.
Now, originally you had an idea of encircling the Kopi on Tuesday morning that you couldn't do for reasons that you
Yes.
You also explained, I think, that the plan was then to encircle on Wednesday morning.
That was
So
my plan, yes.
Yes. Now, this is Tuesday afternoon.
Yes.
So therefore, the encirclement wouldn't have happened yet. Wednesday morning's encirclement wouldn't have happened yet.
Yes.
Right. Now, I take it what you had to do was twofold. You had to, at some stage, take action to disarm, arrest, so forth, the strikers, the armed strikers. Is that right? That we can call the proactive phase.
Yes.
But before you reach the proactive stage, all along, you had to have a reactive phase. You had to make sure that the situation held,
Yes.
that the murder and mayhem didn't burst out, that what had happened, for example, on Sunday, with people being killed, and property being damaged and so on, wouldn't happen. You had to always keep the peace.
That's correct.
Is that right? And we call that the reactive phase. So you had forces in place, you can call them assets, police assets in place to keep the position peaceful, maintain law and order.
That's good.
Stop murder and mayhem. Is that correct? And Tuesday afternoon's operation was intended to be reactive in that sense.
Yes, it was.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Your thinking at the time
Yes.
on the proactive aspect
Yeah.
related to at earliest Wednesday morning.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So those vehicles we see there, the red ones, the Inyalas, I think, with the barbed wire, and the blue ones, and the uniformed people with firearms, they are all part of the reactive phase to keep the peace on Tuesday afternoon. Is that correct?
In the strategy, although it was not deployed that way, but in the strategy...
No, I'm talking about what your idea was.
Yes, that's
your strategy was. Am I understanding you correctly?
That's correct.
I think we can take lunch at the stage, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairperson.
The guy with the red tie sitting there. Is that Farlam's driver? So this guy coming along here.
Get this judge.
Oh, bring him around.
You've got him.
So this guy that's sitting on the panel with him, is that Farlam's driver? Of course he does.
No, he didn't know the standard. In fact, to me, he's invisible.
No, I know. Watch out behind you. Watch out behind you. Sorry?
Sorry, love. He doesn't know.
Okay, you see we need to get some lunch or something to eat.
Okay, this is what I must suggest.
Yeah.
Jacques, let's grab something to eat. Let me see. Yes, but the man was supposed to know. I don't think. It was new way of being there. It's coming. Hi, man. No, they're not even going to eat. Go buy. Sacrament, guys, what are you going to say for X? Sorry. No, stop annoying me. I just want to sit in a little bit. I know the definition, but I want to sit in yes. Wasn't it that time? I don't actually see myself saying the word on camera. It's just the viewers want to go. Contemporaneousness mentioned. Shit.
I'm going to do my
I remember you're not allowed to they're not allowed to do it. There's also touched. Rubber bullets should be the last resort. And this is how many rounds of that. What does not need to be in the plan? That's the thing. The problem is also medical parents understanding what again and use. And then I got to put the plain lab and say according to standing order. No, it's sitting, but the thing is, I can right now get your house close to like could you order and then stay with the plan and then check according to standing order what is not supposed to be in the plan, and then you compare the two, then you say this is what was in the plan, this is what was in the standing order, and this is what is not supposed to be. Because I think I think for me there was no that's the thing, because now it kind of exposes it, you know what, it also exposes their plan. Remember when their plan was criticized about the fact that, remember when they said that their plan was flawed because they had ESTF, MLU, as well as TRT right behind POP. So you find that those kind of situations were not supposed to have taken place, because the standing order said that
Computers leave and
is supposed to be the last.
But then if using STF, not what from
obviously, because that's what they said. The reason why the plan is going to be criticized is because if you're going to have these units that use live ammunition right behind POP, which doesn't have shields, mask, or anything like that, what do you then expect when the POP guys then retreat?
Okay.
You're expecting these ones to fire.
Cheers. You know.
No, I don't know. I need to phone the office and find out how long we need to be here.
Good food.
No, I'll pass because I'm not so nice. And besides that, it's a long way. You're not Mommy, kunjani? Mfana usemsebenzini ngathi unama preconceived ideas njengale call. No, sengisho ukuthi ngathi unama preconceived ideas ngale call. No, I wanted to check. Ujama usangicheck now. Ilo kunjani?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, the cross-examination.
In the canteen, la?
Babhizi nama plan. Wama police. So now